In today's video, I'm going to start to attempt to make my first carbon fiber part. I have the fiberglass system of, I guess, resins and fibers. I'm going to start making a fiberglass mold of my plug, which is going to be the E30's gas cap or gas door. And then with that mold made from fiberglass, I'm going to go and make the carbon fiber part. So I have the gas door still on, but this is going to be my first attempt at making a carbon fiber composite part, mainly because one, it's small, relatively flat, so I think even if I make a couple mistakes, I have enough material to have 3 or 4 goes at it. So really I'll just have to take it off first, and then I'll clean it up. And we'll take a mold of the outside first. I think I'm going to do it in 2 parts. So a carbon fiber part of the outside, a carbon fiber part of the inside, and then bond them together, putting in some type of hinge for the system. But yeah, to get the door off, I'll just need a screwdriver to pop that out, and then moving the door halfway closed, you can get the pins out of the hooks. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll get started on this part. And just like that, we have a nice clean part. The next step is going to be to wax it. We have part all paste number 2. So I'll crack that open and get waxing. We'll just do this side of the part for now. We don't have to worry about the bottom. So I did 3 light coats of the part all paste onto the gas door and buffed those off. So the next thing that needs to be done is I have sign board from just Home Depot, and I'm going to basically make probably a 2-inch or like 1.5 inch flange around the part. So need something like that. So when we make the mold, it has something to kind of smooth out onto, and it'll be easier to release the mold. And then once we make the carbon fiber part, it'll be easier to release the carbon fiber part. So I prepared the flange on the part, and turns out my cutting wasn't very precise. So I had a lot of gaps. I have this blue tape. I don't remember what it's actually called, but it's from fiberglass. And I used the blue tape to kind of fill the seams and then get into the corners where I couldn't really get it to match that well. I probably could have gone a little wider on some sections. So the next part is going to be using modeling clay to fill into these gaps here to give it a bit of a lip. So I think that helps with the mold release later on, and it'll prevent the resin from running into some of these gaps. So I'll just go ahead and get a little bits of the modeling clay, fill that gap in, and make it a nice smooth transition. I have gotten to the point of putting the clay on all of the edges. I think I am probably slightly below the working temperature of what the clay should be at. So I really had to breathe on it and warm it up in my hands to try to get it to lay smooth. Still probably not the best job for it, and I don't know how far out to take it, but overall that part is done. So now that we have basically all of the flange material there with the smooth edges, it's going to be one more coat of the wax, and then I will apply the PVA, which is going to be like a release film for the mold to pop off from. At this point, I have a little bit of PVA release film, and I'm just going to brush it on. Making sure to get it all the way on my flange, and then once it's a little bit drier, we'll go ahead and do, I think, 2 more coats again, waiting between the coats for it to dry. So I finally have the PVA on and it is dried. I probably put on too much. Took forever to dry, so I'll have to keep that in mind to maybe do a lighter final coat on that. But now it's time to get the black tooling gel coat. I have it here. I chose a black one just because no real reason to it. And it goes with this as a hardener, I think. But we're gonna weigh out some. I don't know how much to use. It will harden, I guess, in between coats. So I don't want to do too much and then have the extra kind of harden in the cup. So I'm gonna go ahead and weigh out some and then add the hardener. I think in the volume of the gel coat I'll be using, I'll just be able to count out the hardener drops as opposed to needing to weigh that out as well. So then once I have that, I'll go on, and I think the first coat of that goes on to the part pretty thick. So we'll do that thick coat and then let that dry out a little bit. And then I think 2 more coats to get to a certain thickness. And I guess I can show, I have a gauge here, and we're looking somewhere between the 18 and 20 mils thickness. So I'll go ahead and get going with that. So that's from the second 1 ounce batch of gel coat that I whipped up. It seems okay. There's a little bit left in the cup, so I might give it a few minutes and then try to brush stroke that on. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. I've kind of lost the edges there, so hopefully once I add in the fiberglass, we can get those edges back. Everything's looking pretty good. It's laying down nice and thick as it's supposed to. I've made quite the mess with this gel coat, but that's okay. I'm using all these Harbor Freight microfiber cloths, so easily disposable. Maybe next time I'll get a bigger one or something, a bigger sheet, just to protect the little board I have on the table. But yeah, well, like I said, I'll wait a couple minutes, add just a little bit more that I have left in the cup. But what I've mixed up is going to be the final batch. And then we'll let it dry enough to get tacky, so like I can touch it with my gloves and I can feel it, or like you leave a fingerprint but nothing comes off onto the glove. So that's about when it's going to be ready for the next step, and it should take maybe a couple hours, but we'll see. So I think the gel coat's ready to move on to the next step. If I look at it, and so I have a clean glove and I'm just kind of tapping. You can see, I don't know how well it'll show on the GoPro, but you can see where I'm tapping and nothing's on the glove, so that's good. I do notice a few bubbles, so not sure if that'll come out as pinholes on the top of the surface once we get there, but we'll continue with this and just see what we get and move on. We'll face those problems later. So the next thing I'm gonna do is the resin. I pre-cut my sizes. I have 2 chop strand mats and then 2 continuous strand mats. I'm gonna do the chop strand first and then finish off with the 2 continuous strand mats. And then I have the resin that's needed for fiberglass, and again our hardener. For the weight of the fiberglass I'm going to use, I need about 11 ounces of resin for that, and that'll do all of the layers. And then I will add the hardener in there as well, and I need, I think, just under like half, or just over half a teaspoon, so not a lot. And I did find a little measuring cup for that. So I'll go ahead and measure these out and get the fiberglass down. Have my mixing stick. I'll go ahead and get this up. Some people do recommend dumping this into another container just to make sure that there's no pockets of hardener. I think I want to be careful about no bubbles, but I'm not too sure how hard or easy that is at this stage. So you can see I've mixed it up. Back at the part with our resin, and go ahead and get a brush, start laying it out, and then put the fiberglass on top. I did crinkle up the fiberglass just to get it a little bit easier to form around the edges. For this, I don't really know how thin or thick it needs to be. So we're just gonna glop it on there. That feels pretty good. My cuts are definitely oversized, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm gonna start in the middle, get my fingers all nasty. And then I've seen you can use the brush, kind of brush it out and tap it into place. Trying to really wet it through to get the flange as well. So I finished putting on the resin and the fiberglass, and this is what it looks like. The chopped strand stuff goes down really nice, and that was easy to work with. The continuous strand, as you know, I guess it's doing its job of being the thicker material to build up layers better. Tough to work through. It's sticking up on some of the edges. I don't know at this point if it's too much resin or not enough resin, but based off of the calculations, it should be the right amount. I just don't know if I was supposed to wait longer between adding the layers or something along that line. Because it's a little cold outside and I am gonna leave it in the garage overnight, we're gonna give it definitely until tomorrow afternoon to check out how it is, but that really should be it. After this stage, it should be flipping it over and cracking the mold off of the plug and see if we made a good enough fiberglass mold. So hopefully, I did trim off a little bit of the edge just so that extra resin wasn't like seeping into big hangovers. So now everything's just kind of tucked in there. And when I had my gloves on, I could pat it down and there was definitely a lot of resin coming out. So hopefully that kind of overnight seeps through all of the strands and really solidifies the plug. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today, and then hopefully tomorrow I can run with the actual carbon fiber part of making this carbon fiber part. So we'll pick this up with the carbon fiber part tomorrow. So I'm out here the next day. I've given the fiberglass part about 24 hours to harden up, and you can see here it's definitely hard. So what I'm gonna do is try to crack that away from the part and the flanges that I built so that we can see how the mold turned out, and maybe trim it a little bit before I go in for the laying down the carbon fiber in the mold. Well, I was able to pop the gas door back out, and you can tell nothing stuck to it. There's still a little bit of clay on it. The mold itself looks actually better than I thought it would. Where I had the flange material, it still feels a little sticky, and that part's not smooth, but the actual part is smooth. I don't know if you can see that. There's like 2 little pinholes in it, but I don't think that'll make a difference. I have to clean up the rest of the clay. You can see the PVA is still on it, and then I'm going to try to trim up the mold with a Dremel that I have, but it's from Harbor Freight, so I don't know how strong it is or how well I'll be able to cut through this. At this point, I'm just pushing forward with what I have, hoping that it turns out all right. I think I might have to end up redoing this mold, but I've gone ahead and did another layer of that Pardal paste, and then 2 layers of the PVA release film. It's drying currently, and then while that was going on, I went ahead and cut three sheets of the carbon fiber I'm using, and it's a 3K 2x2 twill. So 3 layers, and then the fact that I was going to do a front and a back of this part, 3 layers on both of those for 6 total of this carbon fiber for a gas door, I think is overkill, but might as well make something strong while I'm testing out how to do this. But you can see like I didn't even get all of the clay out, but I'm hoping the fact that that's going to be trimmed off the final part, it shouldn't make a difference here. So we'll go ahead, let this part dry out, and then I have the 200 or 2000 and then the 2060 series for the carbon fiber epoxy, and once it gets a little bit closer I'll mix that up. So for the carbon fiber resin, I'm gonna lay some of it down first and then come back through and put the carbon fiber on top. And that looks like my PVA wasn't dry all the way. Had a bit of a mistake going to put the epoxy resin on for the carbon fiber layers, so I'm trying to restart at that step. I'm out of clean paintbrushes, but I do have a roller, and it is a small part, so I think just even using my fingers might be enough to cram it into the spots. But I'm gonna put the resin down first, and then put the layers on. So I'll just pour out some of the resin. And see if I can smooth that out everywhere, because it doesn't need to be perfect at this stage. So because I'm using that 2060, it does give me 60 minutes of working time. Just continue to try to massage this resin through. I am purposely rotating the design of the carbon. I don't think it matters too much for this part because of it's not like a structural part, but moving the layers in different directions on your different layers helps for some structure later on. I'm at the final step for today. I've seen carbon, I guess there's like 3 types of ways that you can do it. One just being the wet layup, and so what I've done so far, just leave it at that. But then there's also like vacuum bagging it, and then there's like a vacuum resin infusion where you pull the resin through your layers using vacuum. I'm gonna do the vacuum bagging. They say it will help, I think, get rid of some of the bubbles and kind of pull the pieces tighter together. So I just picked up a vacuum bag, thinking that I was buying 3 medium bags, but I bought 1 large one. So the part is kind of comically small in there. We have it in there. My vacuum should work. So what I'm gonna do is suck the air out of this and then let it sit. I guess it'll sit overnight, and then tomorrow I'll pull the part out, crack it off the mold, and hopefully it looks okay. I don't need a perfect part with it being my first time, but I would like a part that is one piece, so we'll see what we get tomorrow. Following vacuuming the part in the bag. Not sure if it'll work, because what's stopping the resin now from keeping the bag stuck to the part? Don't know. So might have a layer of plastic bag on the back, so on the back side of my part. I'll always give us a chance to still check the front to make sure that the front's nice and smooth. Well, I had the battery down the GoPro, so instead of, actually going in and charging it, I'm just gonna finish up here. I popped my piece out, and you can see it didn't really turn out great. So the back side, which was the top in the mold, shiny like I wanted it to be. The back, the part front side, I guess, what would be visible is pretty beat up, and it looks just like the resin was pretty goopy there. So I think that was from my mistake, not letting the PVA dry all the way. So when I put down the resin, it kind of, I think, reacted with that and caused this problem. You can see I finally was able to pull up the extra clay. So next time I know I definitely need to have that clay fully removed before trying to put down the carbon fiber parts. And with that, the molds jumped too. So I don't know how well that comes up, but I mean, it just doesn't look good. There's resin on it. There's that whatever chemical reaction with the PVA. There's still some clay. So we'll have to redo a mold before we make another attempt at our part. You can see, I mean, I just cut a little bit of the loose material off, but at least I got the bump in it that you use to open the gas door. So I was worried about that not forming in there. So I was able to get that pretty well. But yeah, first carbon fiber part was a fail, but I have enough material and I'll be able to try again.